Hello and welcome to the 360 Method, the Autism 360 podcast, where we talk all things autism as well as what's happening on the program. And today we're going to be talking to our super coach, Ashleigh Hyman. And Ashleigh, it is great to have you here today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about a really important topic with Ashleigh, which is about how to get more done in less time. And I think that's something that all our lovely parents and carers out there will appreciate some tips on how to do that. So before we get started, though, I just wanted to remind you that this podcast is not intended as medical advice. So if you are concerned about someone you're caring for, please seek professional advice or reach out to us here at Autism 360. So today's a great topic, Ashleigh. I feel like you're one of those really super organised people who is going to be so helpful in this area. And I think sometimes people think that, oh, I'm just not that type of person. I'm disorganised. I'll never be organised. And I think, you know, in my own experience, I probably went from someone who was like that to being very organised now. So I think it's something we can learn. It's a learned behaviour and a learned skill. And today, looking forward to hearing some of your tips on what our listeners can do to become more efficient with their time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's something that does need to be practiced in a way. And it's about finding what works for you too. Not everyone's going to be a diary person or a visual person. But when you find that way that works for you, then it stays around for longer. And that's when you're reaching that organized stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess it gets easier because all of a sudden, you know, you are able to stay on top of things more, and it's easier to manage everything by being like that. So that's fantastic. So what are some of your tips, Ashleigh, on how we can get more done in less time?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, not every strategy will be for everybody, but what I've found that's super helpful is just having a plan. Having a plan can help with time management, because as soon as you know that you've got something mapped out, whether it's just in your head or on paper, it gets momentum going, and that can help with your time management. If we kind of play things by ear, then we're not factoring in time management at all, so it's not going to occur. So having a plan is helpful. I'm not talking super strict, that you have every moment of a day planned out every day. That's not practical for a lot of busy people. But just some sort of a structure in mind, that's super helpful for time management. And then when we go into being proactive, you can break it down a little bit more. And for what I find is making things visual. I don't know about you, but if I make things visual, I can feel it's being taken off of my working memory. And it clears up space to think. And I know I'm not going to forget. I don't have to, actively work at organizing my thoughts. So making a visual can be a really good spot too. Is that something that works for you, or how do you manage it?
I love having a schedule, and I think I'm the sort of person that if I don't have my schedule set out, or I can get very distracted, and I might be really busy, but it's like, what did I actually do today? Did I get everything done, or those most important things? So I think it definitely helps you to stay focused and stay on track. And I think it does. It takes a lot of that thought process out of things, or feeling overwhelmed and overloaded in your mind, to put it on paper or on your Google Calendar. Absolutely. It really is a big, that's probably one of the biggest things that's helped me, I think, having that. So, yeah.
And it's true, sometimes you'll write it down and there might be just 3 things, but you felt like for whatever reason there was 100. And that's because they could be 3 big things. But once you put it down, not only are you helping your working memory, you might instantly feel a bit of relief. And then, if you need to go the step further and schedule them in, all right, that's a today job, that's going in my calendar for tomorrow. We're talking about time management and, scheduling in, being on top of things. Yeah,
absolutely. I think for all these people who are juggling families and children and school and all those projects and things, it is a lot to keep track of. So it definitely is a great skill to do for yourself, but also I think for our children as well. I find a lot of the teenagers on the program, I've, just set them up with a good schedule, and they love it. A lot of them really thrive on that, and they can use their colors and block things in, and it's a really great thing to learn. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's for the whole family too. So far I've touched on kind of adult strategies, but it's for the whole family. I've seen some families that have the massive whiteboard and, broken into columns per family member. That's brilliant. If you can have a literal calendar that has all of the tasks for each person, either color coded, you're feeling organized, you're feeling on top of things, and your kiddos are seeing what's expected of them, because they go to school or they go to kinder, and that's a part-time or full-time job, and we wonder why they might get upset with speech is on today when they know speech is on every Monday, but they needed that list just like we did. They needed to see what was ahead for them. Really into that whole family calendar setup. That's super helpful for everyone. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's such a good tip. And I mean, the plan is great. It reminds me of that old quote, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I just think it's like, having a plan really helps set you up for success. Absolutely. So I think it's a really good tip. And I guess that's probably one of the things that I spoke to a parent earlier today even, and we're talking about how to help her 15-year-old son. And he's not very good at, he has, I said, does he have a routine? Does he have a schedule? He's got ADD, and, staying organized and is, a challenge for him. And the mother said, no, he doesn't. And she said, and I don't either. And so I think it's really good if we can set that up for ourselves and model that to our children as well. So it's hard, I guess, for them to be on top of those things if the rest of the house is a little bit chaotic. So, it's a great starting point with the parents, and hopefully the children are able to learn and do that for themselves at some stage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're talking about the families that have time to sit down and write things out or make that calendar. For families that don't have that time, they're just on the go, just having a list that gets rubbed off when the job's done. Whether that's a little whiteboard for each family member and a job gets written down, your to-do list, and you rub it off when it's done. If that's the quickest on the go that you've got time for, that's still really helpful. Kind of that brain dump onto somewhere is good.
Absolutely. It's such a good feeling crossing those things off, or ticking them off. I think you feel very good sense of achievement from that as well. Absolutely. Which is nice. And it sort of motivates you to get more done. I find having a list of 3 things, usually my 3 most important things to do at the end of the by the end of the week. And then I have my 3 things to do each day. My most important things, there's obviously other things as well, but I find that the 3s work for me because it feels achievable, and it's a lot easier for me to go, right, I can get that done. And, there may be other things as well that day, but they're the most important things. If I was to get those done, that would have the biggest impact on whatever it is I'm working on. So I find sometimes breaking that list down does work for some people if they feel a bit overwhelmed with a big list.
That is good. And that is the thing, you can easily break it down. You sit there and you drop 6 things to do and you think, no wonder I was overwhelmed. But do they all have to be done today? What is the site of some of them? Is it today? There's some tomorrows, there's some this week's. And that way you are able to break it down, and you might end up with that 3 structure. So it can definitely be done. But we're talking about from a perspective of you've got to sit down and start the process for it to pay off.
Definitely. So even just, block out a little bit of time. I think if you can, it will make your life a lot easier moving forward. So it's definitely a good investment in half an hour to just set up a bit of a schedule and routine. And I think people thrive having that as well. So so they're great tips, Ashleigh. And I think another thing that I find, sometimes parents you know, that sometimes there's a lot of clutter in the house, and I find that decluttering is another really good way to, you know, be more organized. And it's almost like your room or your house is a reflection of your mind. If there's too much going on, I think it creates a lot of that clutter in your mind as well. So that's probably another thing that I sometimes encourage parents to do. And I've had some that have walked me around their house going, look at this, and they're, you know, there's so much stuff, and they start clearing it out, and they feel so good, but they start to really feel on top of things as well.
Yeah, this is true. And look, it might be different things for you as well. It took me a long time to realize that for me, it's the floors. If the floors feel clean in my house, I don't feel like I have lots of things to do. But if they feel dirty, it feels like the whole house has to be cleaned. And all of a sudden, my list, I would assume, would be 10 things long, but it's actually just one.
Yeah.
So finding that thing for you, what you need to be on top of to make your list feel emptier. Yeah, that's very true.
Yes. And look, I know it's sometimes, I think, hard for parents to find, or carers to find the time, but I do think that setting aside, as I said, a little bit of time to just get a plan for the year, get a schedule. I just try it, because I think, yeah, everyone, once they get started on that, actually feels calmer, is able to get more done. It actually frees you up, because it's not all rolling around in your head all the time. So I think they're really good tips. The other thing I think as well, I'm a big fan of setting goals, and I think when you have that clear focus on what you're working on, it really helps channel your focus, your energy into those most important things for you. And I like to look at, what are the big rocks? What are those most important things in your life? Because right now, maybe it is your family, your work, your relationship. You might be filling your time up with a lot of little things that actually is taking your time and energy, and not actually the most important thing for you at this stage. And I think sometimes it's just getting clear about, okay, what are my big rocks? Am I spending time on other things right now that is not my priority? And I think when we get clear about that, that really frees up a lot of time. Sometimes we get a bit stuck on social media as well, things like that, that can waste our time a little bit. So I think it's looking at, yeah, where are those time thieves? Maybe it's a friend you've got that likes to chat, but it's like, you know what? And I think when we're at home with kids and things, like, people think you're always available. You can, you know, ring at any time, but maybe you just need to sort of take your power back and go, that time doesn't actually work for me, or I don't have as much time to spend on these things at this stage of my life.
Yeah. And to acknowledge the opposite direction then of what, you know, we discussed, the house being clean or decluttering, is that, are we spending too much time on the little things like all toys must belong in certain places at all time? Well, if you've got toddlers, you've set up yourself to constantly have that goal on your list, because they'll constantly be moving them. So yeah, you might even have to step back in the opposite direction and say, a little bit of messiness, organized mess is okay, because that drops off one of my tasks that's just permanently written on my list. So there's that avenue as well.
Definitely, I think so. So look, you know, I think we've covered quite a few good tips today. And you know, is there any other tips, I guess, you had before we go into our question for today's topic?
Oh, you know, really, I would just say stick with the visual side of things, because it lets you decide how intense you're going to go with it, how structured you're going to go. If it's just that brain dump, if it's then mapping it out into when you're going to do it, if it's prioritizing, or deciding if it's even needed at all. All of that can be done if you do a visual strategy. So that's main tip.
Lovely. We love our visual strategies, and
Absolutely.
a lot of our kids on the program just love them too. So it's a really good help. So we had Sally from WA has a 16-year-old daughter, and she said she's very disorganized, and it's not helping her with school. So she's just wondering where she should start.
Yeah. And look, with all children, any age, we want to create autonomy. So a 16-year-old, we're definitely factoring this in. So what is it for her that she would like? What system would she like in place? That's actually step one. We would like her to be more organized. We know that she's getting to an age of adulthood, but we're going to need to make sure that the system, or what we're going to suggest, is what she actually wants and works for her, because we've just talked about how everyone is different. That's going to be the same for a 16-year-old. So I would start step one with thinking to yourself all different ways, different systems she could use to organize herself. Is it the brain dump? Is it a diary? Is it having a calendar? Come up with all of these ideas, put it to the 16-year-old and just say, which one would work for you on a daily basis? Because she's the one that's going to be maintaining it. We might monitor it and prompt it, but she'll be maintaining it. So I think the most important part is how we deliver the ideas to her. And then she's got that buy-in. She's got that commitment to it because it was something that she agreed to and was interested with.
I love that. I'm such a big believer in that, getting that ownership and buy-in, because if she feels like she's part of the solution, then that's going to really help her be more motivated to stay, to stick to that. So I 100% agree. And sometimes our kids are giving us clues. The mother I spoke to earlier today, she said her son actually says, when are you going to bed, Mum? Or when's this happening? And she'll go, in a few minutes. He goes, no, at what time? So he's actually really just saying he would thrive having a bit of a structure and a schedule. And there is none, for them. But she went, oh my goodness, So sometimes it's looking at, I guess, what your child may be interested in. But I love that. Get their buy-in, give her some options, at least show her what the different options are, and get her to choose which one she thinks would work best for her. So hopefully that helps you, Sally. And look, I think there's some really good tips. I always like to say, what are you actioning from today? Even if it was just one thing, I think it's good to just go, right, I'm going to start with that. And that one thing can really make a big difference. So hopefully our listeners can take at least one thing from today and put that into action straight away. So thank you, Ashleigh. It was so lovely to have you, and I love your tips, and look forward to having you again on another podcast. And so thank you.
Thank you for having me, and I'll be back soon.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.